Good morning, Mr. Alessi.
Good morning, Mr.
Good morning, Mr. Yannetti. Good morning, Ms. Reed. Good morning, jurors. So I have 3 questions I have to ask you because I haven't seen many of you for a long time, and we do appreciate that you're all here, ready, willing, and able to get started early. We sometimes have to deal with a few things before bringing you in, but we do.
We can't hear those.
So by the way is defined in
Nope. Nope.
You can and likely will be discovered, so please be extremely cautious. If you inadvertently see something about this case, please disregard it and let us know. As best as you recognize them, please have no contact with any of the participants in this trial or anyone associated with either side, including the lawyers. Please do not visit any locations that may be mentioned during the trial. We'll go on a view, as I told you, and I'll discuss that with you before we go. Remember, you were instructed that you must not, and you assured us that you would not read, watch, or listen to any account of any aspect of this case in any news media, social media, or from any other source. It is critical that you follow that instruction. Finally, please continue to keep an open mind.
Kevin and Coco.
I know that you will try this case according to the oath that you've just taken as jurors. When you took that oath, you promised that you would well and truly try the issues between the Commonwealth and the defendant according to the evidence and the law. If you follow that oath, approach this case with an open mind, and make your decisions fairly and without prejudice or bias or sympathy for anyone.
This is Kevin and Coco, and it's the Vogue one. I buy them because I like the art on the outside.
Then you will arrive at a true and just verdict, and that's all we ask of you. So it's now time for the opening statements. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Wait, I forgot to do mine.
At 6:04 a.m. on January 29, 2022, the alarm bell sounded in the Canton Fire Department. Firefighter paramedic Timothy Nuttall knew it that night. His heart skipped a beat, he raced to his equipment, and he picked up his bag, which was meticulous. There was a sign and a signal, and then there was a voice commanding that there was cardiac arrest. The most serious of calls for a firefighter and paramedic, that means that a person's heart has stopped. He didn't know who it was, he didn't know where it was, he took his bag, he had just gotten to the station, and he rushed to the ambulance. He was one of the most senior paramedics that morning. Another paramedic, Anthony Flamati, would be running this mission. He jumped in the back of the ambulance, the door shut, and they headed off to 34th Fairview Road. As they drove, Firefighter Nuttall could not see anything. Couldn't hear anything other than the engine of the ambulance. He could feel it sliding across the road. It was near blizzard conditions. He calmed himself, he steadied himself. This is what the firefighters and paramedics are trained to do, focus. And he focused on his task. He looked around the back of the ambulance to make sure all tools were in place. The ambulance was meticulous as well. This was Anthony Flamati's ambulance, and it was well stocked. He calmed himself, and he thought about what was going to happen. What should he be looking for? What is his next steps? He played the scenarios through his mind, and every calm was about him. As the car pulled up to 34 Fairview, the ambulance, he stood at the back door, the doors open, and he stepped out into that room. He could hear a woman screaming and shrieking, the cold hard air slapping on his face, and the wind, blizzard conditions swirling around him. You will hear him tell you how he trudged towards those screams in the darkness to snow. And when he got there, he saw 3 women surrounding a man lying, not moving on the ground. He walked up to the man,
I can't control that.
and he reached down and he tried to find any signs of life, pulse, anything.
I have it at 100.
And he found nothing. And he got up and he walked over to the woman, and he walked over to that defendant, Karen Reed, and he told her that he thinks that that man is gone. And then he heard the yell from Anthony Flamati, the chief, and he said, "Come back, let's go. Because you'll learn that in the cold, even if somebody's heart stops, even if they're presumed to have passed, sometimes you can still save a life." So you'll see on a dash cam video, you'll hear from testimony, he went back to that man, who was John O'Keefe. He went back to him, and that crew coordinated
Yes,
effort.
just
They did everything they could to save his life. They got on their knees, they began CPR. A firefighter Nuttall will explain as he knelt over John O'Keefe. He looked up, and the defendant approached him, and you'll see it on the video. Now, he wanted any information, because when you're trying to save someone, you want to know, are they on drugs, medication, do they have a heart condition? And he looked up at Miss Reed, and he said, "What happened?" And you'll hear her words to firefighter Nuttall. She said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." And it was at that time, through the words of the defendant, that she admitted what she had done that night, that she hit John O'Keefe. Now, those words didn't mean anything to firefighter Nuttall. They weren't in context, they didn't reconcile the injuries, they didn't help him in his treatment, so he ignored it. Now, firefighter Nuttall is not a police officer. He is not an investigator, he is not a detective. He's a first responder. And so he takes that information, it was useless to him, he continues to work on John O'Keefe, trying to save his life. You'll see the team put him on a stretcher. And when they lift him from the ground, even though there is snow accumulating underneath John O'Keefe, he simply grasps hard ground. Frozen.
Thank you for the follow.
And beneath his body lay his cell phone. They bring him to the ambulance, and while they bring him to the ambulance, you see on the videos that other first responders speak to the defendant. One first responder, Mrs. Flamati, she will say, "I hit him, oh my God, I hit him." And then she was interviewed or asked questions for background information, not a criminal investigation, just background to try to help John. And she was asked questions about his background. And during that conversation, you won't hear her speak. The defendant was a person by the name of Jen
Thank
McCabe
you, Carol. Welcome to the team.
and a firefighter McLaughlin. And she tells Fire McLaughlin, with her first responder, "I hit him." They bring Mr. O'Keefe to Good Samaritan Hospital, and his body is cold. The doctors work feverishly. They treat him, try to save him. They try to warm his course. And unfortunately, firefighter Nuttall's first instinct is accurate. John O'Keefe passed. So why are we here today? We are here today because John O'Keefe was killed by the actions and conduct of that defendant, Karen Reed. You will learn in this case through facts, science.
I do. And you win because you're the only person that noticed. I did something today. That was probably stupid, but I did it for the sake of being the guinea pig of our group. You know that shampoo hair dye? I had used it once before, so I still had an entire bottle, and I'm like, okay, let's just try seeing if you could use it again. So I did. I put it on. I got really nervous, and within 5 minutes, I washed it off. So there is a slight change to the hair color today. But otherwise, yes, I do. It's something I started doing on the regular about a little less than a year ago. But, yeah. Just a little touch up. I wanted to see if we could use it again later. And they say you could use it whenever you know. But I didn't know if almost a year made the difference. And for sake of research purposes, I take my role as the guinea pig very seriously. Now we know. Thank you.
In data, you will learn that on January 29th, 2022, when the defendant, the Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, all the way to the left side in a dark corner near a flagpole, you will learn that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car. He got out and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication, will learn from the science and data.
Try the shampoo hair dye. I have no problem with it. I only had it on for 5 minutes. It did what it was supposed to do for 5 minutes. I just was a big chicken and only waited for 5 minutes because I didn't know if opening it almost a year ago made a difference. Now we know.
She stood by the side of the road. The defendant in her SUV drove away. She drove at least 35 feet away. The argument was over. It had ended. But then she stopped. She stopped. She put the Lexus into neutral and she waited 2 minutes. And the facts and the science and data will tell you that despite the fact the argument was over, she then put the Lexus into reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal, and began to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. There was a light dusting of snow, the Lexus tire spun backwards, she went backwards at least 70 feet, she clipped John O'Keefe, he fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull, and there he lay in the corner of Fairview Road, on the ground, lying on top of his cell phone, alone. And then the defendant will later tell that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded. Yet he was. And she simply drove away. Now, before I tell you about the data and the facts and the science, and I walk you through that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was a young man, a local kid, a very well-liked, loved. John O'Keefe is the son of Peggy O'Keefe, John O'Keefe Sr., and the brothers Paul. Hampton, worked hard, he became a police officer, but what you're going to learn, the fact that he worked for the Boston police officer, as a Boston police officer, was just a fraction of his life. It was a small, really unimportant part, because the biggest part of John O'Keefe is he was a family man. Not in the traditional sense. See, John O'Keefe never had biological children, John O'Keefe was never married. But John O'Keefe had a sister, and she had 2 children. And when the children were 62 years old, his sister unfortunately died. And shortly after, his sister's husband died. And John O'Keefe was a help. He didn't survive. He saw these 2 recently orphaned children, and he stepped in and he said he was going to raise them. So he put aside his career, he put aside his job, and he moved in with the children and raised them like they were his home. They were his passion, his love. He was a new parent, his successes, failures, like all parents. And he raised the children with the help of people in the community, with the help of his brother, with the help of his family. And they led a good life. Enter Karen Reed. Around COVID, the defendants and Mr. O'Keefe reacquainted, and they started a relationship. And you'll hear that even though the defendant had her own home, she was staying with Mr. O'Keefe a lot, 4, 5, 6 times a week. And to most of the world, it was a pretty good relationship. They spent time together, they did activities with the children together. She helped with providing the children, feeding the children. It was a steady relationship until about the beginning of 2022. And then things began to unravel. There was tension. There was arguments. In fact, just a few days before this incident, you'll hear that Mr. O'Keefe asked her to leave. But she wouldn't. You're going to be able to read text messages of their conversations. On January 28, 2022, you will see the tension and the unraveling of the relationship. You will read about the discord between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe. You will see that when you would ignore her calls, they would become incessant. When he would try to push away, she would come closer. You will read those text messages and you will realize that this was the beginning of the end of this relationship. That night, they decided they would go out together. I want to tell you something about data and science before we get to that night. I mentioned that underneath John's body was a cell phone. A cell phone is an amazing piece of technology. It is like a computer. It carries extraordinary data. And when they found the cell phone, the only thing they had done that night, they studied the cell phone, and there will be some remarkable data that you will use in this case to find the truth. I want to mention 3 different things you will find in a cell phone that are critical to this case. The first is called location data. Waze we've all heard of, Google Maps. Well, at some point that night, John put his Waze on, and Waze is like a breadcrumb that will show.
It's in the courtroom. I can't do anything about it.
Second
Sorry.
by second. It is the strongest, most accurate location data that you can have. And that night, John was using Waze. It also will have healthcare data. Healthcare data will show when somebody is moving.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's qualified as steps, but it doesn't necessarily mean somebody's stepping, moving their arms, walking, turning. It doesn't show what direction or how far, but it shows movement of a person. Healthcare. And the third thing, remarkably, to get expert in this case, we found a data file on the phone, and it tracks the temperature of the cell phone battery.
Oh no, it's that.
That will be critical to your analysis in this case, the temperature
And he
of
keeps
the cell
moving
phone
everywhere.
battery. And so with that, I want to take you back to the timeline of that night. After the discord, both the defendant and Joe Keith decided they would meet at a bar called McCarthy's. Now McCarthy's is a local bar of visitors pending. People are getting together in a celebratory mood. They go to McCarthy's and they see a video of the bar. And you will watch both Mr. O'Keefe, friends, and the defendant drinking alcohol. And you will count 8 vodka drinks that the defendant drank. They arrive at 8:50, they stay till 9:45. And so at least 7 of those drinks in less than 2 hours. The last thing, you'll see when they leave the bar, she puts it under the jacket, and they walk out and they go to another bar to meet other friends called the Waterfall. They reach the Waterfall sometime around 10 p.m. When they go to the Waterfall, you'll see a video. When I said celebratory mood, you'll see a group of friends with John O'Keefe, many who are friends with Karen, with John, and you'll see them clapping and happy or joyous as they're there. You'll see many hugs between John O'Keefe and his friends and the defendant and many of the people there. And they spend some time together, they're drinking, and they all do a shot. And that will be at least the 8th drink within 3 hours that you consume. You will see from the data, not just the cell phone data, but there's some other very important data. And the other piece of data that goes hand in glove with the cell phone is information on the defendant's Lexus vehicle chips. You might have heard of black box in an airplane, or there's some type of event that captures a small amount of time. Well, that was captured in the defendant's Lexus. That black box information with the cell phone data will tell you everything you need to know. It will bring us step by step through the entire night to that. And so they leave the Waterfall bar at 12:12, and you'll see that the ignition goes on to the defendant's Lexus. And both John O'Keefe and the defendant in their car, they decide that they're going to go back to 34th Fairview Road, where we talked about earlier. They're going to go there for a get-together for one of the homeowner's sons who's having a birthday party. And so as they drive back, we'll be able to follow them to this location data. When they go back to Fairview, they don't know exactly where it is, and they get lost.
Hey, how are you?
Makes a phone call. Has a phone call with one of his friends, Jen McCabe. And during that phone call, which the defendant listens to because she recounts it, and trying to get corrections, Jen McCabe tells her it's near Bella's mom's house. We'll learn that Bella, mom is somebody that John had dated before. And so as they make their way to Fairview, you will see there's a road that comes down like a loop and it leads to Fairview. They take a wrong turn in the loop, and then they do a 3-point turn in the driveway. That precise driveway they turn into because some type of acceleration will be triggered.
We're doing this as if we are the jury. We're doing virtual jury day one. They're in opening statements right now. So please don't give us any spoilers. We're being the pretend jury.
That black box in the Lexus. And that's important. You got 7 minutes before the collision. And you'll see from the ways exactly where the car was. You'll see from the black box, the event of the 3-point turn in the driveway, and then they turn down the ferry. But before they get there, at 12:23, a truck is coming the other way. And the witnesses in that truck will say they blinked the lights, one of them saw a man and woman in the car, John and the defendant, and then they followed the Lexus, because they were going to the same house. The truck stopped at the driveway, and the Lexus, the defendant's car will appear out of the waves, and you come from second to second, never stops. It will very slowly, all the way to the end of the yard, in the corner where there's a tree line and a flagpole. And they reach that location at 12:34:33. And they're in the car and they stay there. The truck waits, it's keeping somebody in the house and coming out. The person goes back in the house and they're for about 5 minutes. We're now down to 2 minutes before the collision. The truck leaves, and now it's just the defendant and John. And while they're waiting outside at 12:27, John gets a text from Derek Hayes. Park behind.
I want to check something. There are some times where Long Crimes audio is just not the best. And that's why you'll hear me often say that I like Court TV. I'm going to check Court TV and see if they have the audio cleaned up at all. If we're lucky, they do. It's driving me crazy. So I just gotta check. It's driving me crazy. I have my volume at 100. I can't do anything with it like that. So let's just see. Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. Let's see here. We could try CBS. Let's see if they're in
Order,
here.
Mr. Brennan,
What's the matter, Nellie?
likely to reflect stereotypes or
Put the Lexus in reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal, and begin to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. There was a light dusting of snow, the Lexus tire spun backwards, she went backwards at least 70 feet. She clipped John O'Keefe, he fell backwards, hit his head. Somebody in the house and coming out, the person goes back in the house and then about 5 minutes.
We're gonna have to deal with you guys.
We're now down to 2 minutes before the collision. The truck leaves, and now it's just the defendant and John. But while they're waiting outside at 12:27, John gets a text from Derek Hayes. Park behind us in the driveway. 12:29, text again. Are you coming in? You'll hear that Derek Hayes look out the window and see the defendant's Lexus in front of the flagpole at the far end. It's snowy, it's dark, it's windy, they're waiting. You will know that John O'Keefe was in that car, that Lexus, it didn't move because its healthcare data is not moving. It's not moving until 12:31:56. At 12:31:56, he begins to move. We'll have 20 seconds before it falls. 20 seconds.
Truth, Amazon. I can send you the link to the specific one. I go for comfort, honestly. There's no shame on Amazon shirts. There's some that are really bad, but there's some that are really good. These are really comfortable. With my fibromyalgia, I have days to where my skin hurts to have anything touch it. So I'm really peculiar with what shirts I wear because it's certain textures that cause me pain. It's hard to explain. Me either. And I like them longer. See, it's not all the way up here. I've got big arms. I'm aware, but we did get some new samples, by the way, guys. Relure. This is Maylee's. This is for tightening and toning. Clearly, I plan to lose weight. That's the goal. And when I do, this is what's going to help me tighten and tone. I hope. Okay. Sorry, guys. Hi, Marie. How are you?
Gets out of the car, the Lexus, and in that 20 seconds, you'll hear that user initiated. He looks at the phone, at the text message page. It's now 12:32:09.
Are you sure you want to know? Yes, you obviously want to know, but it's delayed until July 14th. I put it in the Facebook group and I did a video on it. He's not deciding, so that he did get his delay. I'm funny about my blankets and my pillows and my sheets. Anything that has to do with sleep is my thing. Well, they were arguing about the phone. And they're trying to get that phone thrown out saying that it was improperly received because they didn't have a warrant. But they do have audio of him verbally agreeing to them doing so. The Facebook group is Criminal Musings. And if you guys don't follow my YouTube, if you guys could jump on over and hit that subscribe, it doesn't cost anything and it would help me. It's the same name, Michelle's Criminal Musings.
The last time he uses that phone. From the Wi-Fi bar, you see it in that pocket. And at that time, about 32:09 last user, he has 7 more seconds to move what you like dormant the rest of the night. We'll also have the information from the defendant's Lexus black box. The box run differently than 30-second generous, but it's right in the heart of that time. And you will see in the data at that time, when he makes his last movements with the phone, is when her car leaves 34 feet of the box. And then shoots into reverse with the tires spinning right towards him. Right looking about. You'll know they're arguing because the next morning she tells the firefighter, I'm sad because our last moments were fighting. She drives away. They said she's made later statements that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded. He lied on the ground on top of his phone, like dusting the snow now picking up. And he's just there. It's 12:37. Now, when he's in the car, before he gets to Fairview, the battery temperature of that phone is 77 degrees. 77 degrees in the long car. Now that you've been outside the car for 5 minutes, drops. She calls again at 12:36:33 and leaves a message. You'll hear it. And you will hear the anger and rage in her voice. She leaves a message. John, fucking.
They're interrupting his F-bomb. Let's see if that helps. F-bomb, proceed to drop whenever you're ready. Any day now.
Cell phone drops almost 60 degrees. 12:59, the defendant leaves another message.
Please stand by for technical difficulties from them. I know, right? I'm right there with you.
She did not leave.
For the love of everything holy, come on. I'm just going to leave this pause for a minute, let them get their ish together. Yes, and sir, please use safe words. TikTok thinks we're 5, so whatever you say, I get in trouble for. Then again, whatever you don't say, can't say anything. For the love of God, come on. It's not my connection, so I don't know what the problem is. Any day now, sir.
But then she wakes. 5 o'clock. She is frantic. She wakes up John's niece, and she is unintelligible. She is yelling, she's screaming, she asks her niece to call Jen McCabe. She calls Jen McCabe, and you'll get Jen McCabe to come out of the deep sleep. She wakes up and she hears, Jen, Jen, Jen. Screaming Jen's name. John's dead. Hang up the phone. Jen McCabe.
How dare she do that to those kids?
And then she, what's going on? And she goes, well, I left him at the waterfall. Oh, Jen McCabe, I left him at the waterfall. Jen calls back and says, he's sidewalk front. You didn't leave the waterfall. She went on. He then minutes later calls another person, Carrie Roberts, a friend of John O'Keefe. Someone who's not friends with the defendant, but they know because they helped raise the kids and they interacted. She had nothing to do with the night before, wasn't at the bars, was home with her family. She calls her and says, I think John McCabe might have gone. I think he's dead. No, Carrie, with that information, call 911. She calls hospitals,
No.
hear her voice, she's concerned.
This is not live.
Okay. And then she gets another call from the defendant. And she tells the defendant, come to my house. I will help you look at him. And the defendant says, I was so drunk last night, I don't remember anything. Waiting for her to arrive, she learns she doesn't arrive. Instead, the defendant goes to Jen McCabe's house. Carrie Roberts, the other friend, then goes to Jen McCabe's house, pulls behind the car. And when she does, she goes on the Bluetooth and she can hear the defendant say, my tail light's broken, my tail light's broken. And she looks, and the snow packed in the right tail light, she sees a piece of the tail light missing. The defendant desperately wants to go to 34th Fairview Road, but Terry Roberts takes over and says, we're going to go back to John's house. And he's in the house and you didn't see him. So both cars, driven by Terry Roberts and then Jen McCabe, with the defendant, go back to John's house. You'll see a ring video, and you see them go into the house and they look around, and you'll hear a woman, Jen and Terry, enlisted into this task. Look for John O'Keefe, they cannot find him. And then when Carrie Roberts comes into a room, she's rather than looking, the defendant is standing there, staring at the wall. At that point, the defendant insists they gotta go back to Fairview Road. They decide to take one car. Carrie Roberts is taking charge. She's gonna drive. They leave. This leaves Lexus and Josh's driveway. And they drive back towards 34th Fairview Road. There it is, blizzard-like conditions. It is dark. They can barely see a thing.
Stay near the
And when
microphone.
they get close to the edge of 34th Fairview, you hear the defendant start to scream, there he is. Both women look and they can't see him. She starts kicking the door. The defendant's kicking the door. Let me out. Carrie Roberts stops, trying to runs around. she sees the defendant run exactly to where John O'Keefe is in the darkness. That's where she left him. Carrie gets out of the car, starts to walk towards where the defendant is, and she sees the defendant lying on a body. She can't tell who it is because the face is still covered with snow. And she comes over and looks, and she wipes off the snow from John O'Keefe's face. And she realizes he's one of her best friends in the world, is John O'Keefe. And she starts trying to do first aid. They start to move him, and coincidentally at 6:06, when they start to move him, the cold air hits that cell phone battery. It drops from 50 to 43 degrees. And they try, Jen McCabe calls 911. And that's when a police officer arrives, firefighter Nuttall and his crew. And when they lift him, that cell phone battery that is shut down to 37 degrees, Kerry Roberts picks it up and puts it in their pocket.
Sam, are you in here? Can you do me a favor? I just got a weird post from Reddit saying that today is the day. Keep all the Lisk victims in your thoughts and prayers. Can you see if you got an alert too and see what they're talking about for me? This is prosecution.
It immediately starts to warm as she moves to help get a data. Shoulder movement starts again. At that point, nobody knows what happened. You can't the police department come. You can see the police cars and cruisers. They're not sure. So they look in the area where John body is find glass from the bar. They find blood spots. They try to put the blood spots in plastic containers. They don't know what they're looking for at this point. There's no information. They don't believe or know that there's a crime. They just know that John O'Keefe somehow ended up here with the broken glass and the blood. And so that morning, you can see the work.
My internet is all green. I've got all my bars except one, which is normal. I don't know why this is happening.
Also the news, and they go to the hospital. They go to the Good Samaritan Hospital, and Kerry Roberts is walking, and Peggy O'Keefe is going to go to see her son from her husband. And as she walks down the hall, Karen Reed is also in the hospital. See, there was some reports of maybe she was upset or suicidal, so they sent her, they put her in for evaluation to make sure she was safe. You know, Peggy O'Keefe tell her she walked.
This is getting really annoying.
As she walked by Karen Reed, she stopped and she said, Karen, what? And looked at it, Karen was excited and yelling, he's dead. She stopped for a second. Let's go. She doesn't say a word.
Okay, thank you.
Peggy pays respects to her son. And then she has to go back home because she has to tell the children. Now, while she's out, the Kansas Police Department sent an officer to the house to make sure the children are safe because they're alone.
Sorry, guys. I don't know why it keeps pausing. I don't know why the sound is so bad. We'll get through this one way or another. We'll get through it. I'm suffering as much as you are.
Home, and when the officer pulls in, he doesn't notice anything, but you'll see in the dash cam video notices something. That tail light has a big missing piece to it. They can't find the children.
You've confirmed that? I thought I was losing my damn mind. My 2 videos that I posted this morning weren't even showing up on my page, so I didn't know if anybody could see them. That's why I had asked in another chat if you guys could let me know what you see, because it is confirmed. Do we know why? Is this like an internet thing, or is it a social media thing? Do you guys think we could still retain the information adequately with it doing this? I hate to be that person, but I can't help but wonder if somebody's messing with our internet. With our interweb. If you guys would rather put this off a day and we'll start tomorrow, that's fine. I just need to know what you guys want to do because we are the jury. It is very hard to follow. So when it's chopping it up, it's really, it's bad. Hi, Jen. You know what it probably is? I wouldn't be surprised. I honestly can't understand him either. So there's a couple things that we could do. When the live ends, I can download the prosecution's opening statement and try to clean up the background noise and turn his voice up. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it adequately enough, but I can do that if we have to listen to it individually after I mess with it. If it does work, then I'll post it. But did anybody watch the opening statements already? Like, I feel like somebody had to have known this was so messed up. Just kidding. What the hell is going on with our interweb today? Right? Thank you, Samantha. And the guy won't stay in one place, so he keeps moving away from the microphones. 1 second we'll hear it really loud, and the next it'll sound like he's underwater 500 feet away. Good, because that's the rule. When we do things as a virtual jury, we do not research. We go in completely like a jury would, just virtually. If you guys want to try, we could try. But if it keeps chopping and jumping ahead, there's no point in listening to it because we are not hearing it. It's jumping ahead too. This is an unaliving case. Her boyfriend. There's something going on with the interweb. I don't know what it is. But it keeps messing up and the sound is horrible. And I tried listening to it on a different network and it's still horrible. So we're trying to decide if we want to wait and start this tomorrow when whatever's wrong with the interweb could possibly be fixed. And then I just try to download the opening statements and try to get the noise out of it and elevate his voice. Is it? Okay. You did not give yourself number 5. Why did you pick 5? But is it a good number if that's the person that had said that? And, you know, in Lori's case, we need to find out what number he is. All right, we'll continue. Pinky swear? I don't know because I haven't gone into it. When we do things as a jury, we go in blind. We go in just as a jury. We know that it is a murder case. We know that they were dating. You're going to bring Honor to being juror 5? Okay. Okay. And as the jury, we're aware she's already had other trials. I don't know anything about them. So again, we're doing this as if we're the jury. Okay, see, I didn't even know it was a cop. Right, but as the jury, we don't really need that information because we're trying to be upstanding citizens and following the rules of law and all that. You know, we're role playing a bit, but it's a lot of fun when we do it as a jury. It's a nice change of pace. And we don't have to hear all the in between. All right, let's try this again.
Ultimately, Peggy comes home, Frank is taken down, when they bring the nephew home, and he is distraught.
I believe the judge gave the instruction. If you had seen or read anything about this, disregard it. It makes no impact on how you jury. I do too. I like the change of pace.
Then Peggy hears a knock on the door. It is the defendant and father. They want to come in. They come in, open doors, and they ask, "Can we go upstairs to John's room?" And she told her grandson. They go upstairs, they're upstairs for about 15 minutes. They come down, and quickly they leave. Now they got there, the defendant's father told his wife, the father, to that house. But when they leave, they take 2 cars. They take Alexis, the broken kill light, with them back to the defendant's house.
Y'all are mine every day.
Learn that when police start getting some of the information, they learn about the broken kill light, they learn information that she had told people that she had hit him. They went down to see her, and on their way down, they decided they would get a warrant to take Alexis. When they get down, you'll hear from Trooper Buchanan.
Yeah, I was here.
They went in, spoke briefly to the defendant. They took the car, they brought it back to the campaign. And so,
That reminds me, we need to figure out, we need to get back to using our Discord, and we need to assign whoever wants to be in charge of it, because we need to figure that out.
look to learn from the friend of the defendant, so help the science data is that not only was the cell phone left behind, but also around that area, broken kill light was littered around Donovan's body. Littered around that area.
I get that. I get that a lot. Almost every single day. You're not alone. I get it to where everything I normally like to do no longer interests me. Everything I like to eat or drink doesn't interest me. Music, movies, TV, nothing interests me, and I don't know why. And I'll just feel depression, and I'll not, without anything to have triggered it specifically. Is that like something what you're talking about? You should get one of these little lights. This is the thing that Julie told me about. The therapy light. If you're like me and you never leave your home, this helps with that. Sam, you're using yours, right? We are here. Anytime message. I keep forgetting that you're not in the Facebook. But you know you could download Facebook Messenger without downloading Facebook. Message me or Sam and I'll send you guys, we will send you the links. Or Julie even. Well, it has multiple settings. Warm, cold, natural. I go with natural. You could turn it up, turn it down. You're supposed to leave it on for about, well, it gives you timer options, 10, 30, 60, 90. I try to leave mine on for like a half an hour and then leave it off for a little bit, then put it on. And I only use it in here when we're on the lives. That's the only time. And I truly feel more positive throughout the day. And for me to say that is actually something. I'm not just saying it. There she is. Julie's telling us all about it. Just vitamin D, which many of you may know I'm severely deficient in. So, if you guys want the link, message me, Sam or Julie, and we'll give you guys the link. Okay, let's just figure out this Discord. We have Discord. Not many of us know what the hell we're doing on Discord. We had downloaded it for the subscribers, but it's been in limbo. So I need somebody on my team that knows Discord to take control of it. Me too, Lori. I just don't understand it. Catnip, did you figure it out yet? Me too. So I'm okay. So y'all having the same problem as me. I don't know what it is about Discord. I don't leave either. I only leave for doctor's appointments and family gatherings. The doctor told me in my appointment that he thinks I'm agoraphobic. Alright, so why don't we just do this? Why don't we create a WhatsApp for the subscribers instead of doing Discord? Because we know how to use WhatsApp. Discord is just confusing as hell. I agree. Okay, what I'll do later, okay, here's what I need you to do. I need all of you guys to send me your Discord numbers privately, and I'll invite each of you. I'll create a group for subscribers, and we'll do it that way. We already know how to use it. It's another messenger app. It's literally called WhatsApp. Yeah, I just need you to message me your numbers, and I'll create a chat after the live. We'll do it that way. Nope. We're going to ixnay the Discord because none of us know how to use it. So instead of Discord, we're going to do a WhatsApp group. That is our whole crew. Yeah, download it, and then you'll have a phone number you put in. Just send me that in a message privately, and I'll add y'all to it. I love how Samantha already knows when I misspeak, and she knows how to help clear up what I'm saying. Yeah, when you register, it's with a number. If you don't want to use your number, I believe you could do a Google number. I'm not sure. I just use mine. But with that, we do not share each other's private information. That is one rule I have. If anyone does that, they're out and they're never getting back. So if you guys want to be part of it, send me your stuff, and then I will send you guys the invite. Thank you.
The hospital, they noticed there was a shoe missing. As time went by, so now they're done with investigation. They found the shoe.
Oh, for the love of everything holy.
In the grounds. 4 days later, when they did a plant excavation, they found this cat frozen in the ground.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do is WhatsApp. We already have a team one.
That broken tail light in that area. The sneaker, the black. When the defendant left the trophy behind, to look for something in the trophy, all trace evidence. The door on the back of a Lexus around the taillight area was drawn to DNA and stuck to the side, grasping one last piece of John Owen's head. Now, John O'Keefe fell backwards and hit his head after he was put in the car. And you're going to hear from a very renowned neurosurgeon who's treated thousands and thousands of patients. And the wound on the back of the head fell backwards, finally cracked the skull. It's called a basal fracture. It created an injury called counter croup. He was hit by a car and fell backwards and hit his head on that hard rock ground. Remember, there's no snow, it's just a dusty.
Lori, I already have
the
yours.
back of his brain hits the back of his skull and bounces up. Bounces up with these marks showing that impact. And this neurosurgeon will tell you, treated thousands of patients, that this injury, the reasonable degree of medical certainty, is counter croup caused by falling backwards records. I mean, when the medical examiner for the state looked at it, they generally said blunt force trauma. They had it undetermined. So we wanted to.
I know, but I have a question. Can anybody even hear what he's saying? If you can't and it gets better when the defense does their opening, I'll try to clean up the audio and I'll put out a video as much polished up and turned up as I can. Okay, so let's just skip to the defense and see if it gets better. Oh, he was almost done talking. Never mind. I'll do a video of it after we're done. Give me a little bit of time. I'll get up sometime tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
But I have just a moment to readjust.
Sure, the court officers will be kind enough to help you.
He's readjusting the audio. What a swell guy. I like him. He cares about us swell people that are not there.
Mayor, the evidence in this case will establish above everything else 3 points. There was no collision with John O'Keefe. There was no collision. There was no collision. John O'Keefe did not die from being hit by a vehicle. Period. The facts will show that. The evidence will show that.
Thank you.
The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. You'll learn that the Commonwealth has pinned its entire case on a brazen and a flawed assertion that is untethered, unconnected to the facts and to the evidence.
I don't normally pause to point things out, but there's been something that's been bothering me, and I can't tell if I'm just seeing things or not. You see him back here, behind this guy? Yeah, I'll put it on YouTube. He doesn't have a mouth. I'm not making fun of him. He seriously, I don't see a mouth, and I've been watching it to see if maybe it will appear later, and it hasn't appeared. Did we wake up and get zapped to the Twilight Zone or fall through the Matrix and take a left turn on somewhere we weren't supposed to? I have very thin lips, so it's not that. It looks like he doesn't have anything in the mouth area at all. I'm sorry, but I needed somebody to watch it with me. It was driving me crazy. Okay, continuing.
And their assertion is contrary to science. Because at the end of the day, folks, there was no collision with John O'Keefe. So how did we end up here? How did Karen Reed end up sitting in that chair on trial for an event that literally never happened? Well, the evidence is going to explain it. And it can be summed up in the following text message at the very beginning of this investigation. A text message of a now fired Massachusetts State Police officer named Michael Proctor. He was the lead investigator on this case, and he was talking about a fellow officer, a fellow cop, who owned the property where John O'Keefe's body was found. Text message with a buddy. Question: is the homeowner going to catch any shit?
There's nothing.
Answer: nope.
Hi, baby.
He's a Boston cop, too. That quote defines the lack of integrity of the Commonwealth's entire case, its entire investigation, and this prosecution. During the course of this trial, you'll learn much more about Mr. Proctor, why he said that, and what it really means. What you'll see here in this courtroom in the coming weeks is not just
Okay.
a story of a tragic loss. And make no mistake,
Can you give
John
me my
O'Keefe's death
glasses?
is and was a tragic and tragic loss. But the story you'll hear is about an investigation that was riddled with errors from the beginning, a rush to judgment, conflicted and corrupted from the start. Corrupted by bias, corrupted by incompetence, and corrupted by deceit. Finally, it was corrupted.
What is this all about?
Don't give us any spoilers. Babe, this is opening statement, so you're just in time. Don't give us. Did he?
By a deliberate effort to avoid and to cover up the
Oh, there is
truth
a. Wait.
that you are seeking. You'll find when you hear the evidence that the Commonwealth's case is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. They won't be able to talk their way out of it. They won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to excuse their way out of it. And they can't meet their extreme burden of proof, which the court will tell you is beyond any and all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty.
Thank you, Heather. How are you?
Members of the jury, Karen
Hey,
Reed
wait.
found John O'Keefe dead on the front lawn of a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, at 6 a.m. on January 29th, 2022.
Thank you, Sam.
Picture the scene.
Young man, if you are ever watching this, please don't think that we're trying to judge you or anything. I'm just concerned for you. That's all. That's all. I'm not trying to judge you. It scared me. Was anybody noticing this before I said something? Well, at least we could all be distracted together.
Blood-curdling screams, ambulances, emergency lights on, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol cruisers, police officers, first responders, firefighters, all swarming all over Brian Albert's lawn. Literally feet under his bedroom window. Yet Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder himself,
Julie noticed. Dude brought me 2 pairs of glasses.
Well, I gotta hurry up. Bring the stuff in.
What stuff?
Get changed. Stuff to make tacos.
That's right, you guys. Stuff. Aaron just got home from work and he's making us tacos.
But I gotta do the lawn first, remember?
I see that there's like little indentations right here. Like I could see it now. There's little things or little lines right here, but that's all I see. I don't care if you brought me 2 pairs of glasses, I'm still not gonna see it. Like me, my upper lip is sometimes basically non-existent too. Like I'm thinking maybe we're distant cousins or something. Yeah, every week it's different hours while he's training. And he just started new hours. It's driving me absolutely batshit crazy.
never came outside. Never went outside to see what the chaos was about, never went outside to see if he could assist a man in need, never walked outside his house to see if he could help a fallen fellow officer on his own front lawn. More shockingly, you'll learn that lead investigator for the Massachusetts police, Michael Proctor, never set foot inside Brian Albert's house that day. Never engaged in any investigation inside that house that day, even though a party with much alcohol had just occurred in that house, and even though a Boston police officer was found dead or dying just bare feet from the front door.
Texas, we don't know about the case. We're viewing this as the jury, so please no spoilers.
On that lawn. He never secured the crime scene, never separated and secured witnesses, he never properly collected evidence, he never secured the evidence, he never searched for signs of a struggle inside or outside the home.
That's my question.
This is the opening statements. The problem is when the prosecution gave their opening statement, we couldn't hear it because the dude wouldn't stay near the microphone and the fan was going out like super loud there. So I'm gonna have to clean it up and make a video of it.
Come on now.
What happened?
He's trying to get into the food.
I'm not surprised. He is a panther. By the way,
And that he might stop acting like it.
babe, I love how you noticed that I dyed my hair.
What? You what? You dyed your hair?
And you didn't notice.
It sort of looks the same.
Okay, now that you're all here, I could tell you that what happened. Okay, so I've had the hair dye shampoo, and I used it once before. But being part of Guinea Pig, I take group Guinea Pig very seriously, and I was wondering how long it lasts. How long it lasts, you know, because once it's open, it's you know how many times you could use it. And I figured we're almost at a year that I've had this, so I figured I'd try it. But then I chickened out and I rinsed it out within 5 minutes.
Wait, what?
You really don't see any change in my hair color? I'm going to caution you, as your attorney, sir, that you never...
I mean, it does have a lot redder tint to it.
I'm going to throw this at you.
What?
Okay, well, now y'all know you can use this, even if you had it for a year.
He never properly canvassed the neighborhood. Michael Proctor never
I'm done
did
pausing,
any
sorry.
of these things. Even though fellow officers of his, of Michael Proctor's, actually mentioned, in their words, not mine, that it looked like John O'Keefe may have been, quote, in a fight.
How are you?
You'll have questions about that conduct.
This is the one in my
During the
showcase.
course of this trial, you'll find that the Commonwealth will not have answers.
I'm going to try to say the name. The company is Kai Guy Bai. CAIGAIBAI. It's in my showcase. But keep in mind, I didn't leave it. When 5 minutes was up, I hopped in the shower because I scared myself. Okay, I'm done pausing for real now.
You'll see from the evidence in this case that this case carries a malignancy. One that is spread through the investigation, it's spread through the prosecution.
I will pause to defend myself. This was the best picture I could find. All the other ones were blurry. But if you want to send me a better picture, I have no problem changing it.
From the very start, from the jump. A cancer that cannot be cut out, a cancer that cannot be cured. And that cancer has a name. His name is Michael Proctor. Now, you didn't hear his name in the prosecution's opening statement. Not once. But I suspect that was probably by design. But make no mistake about it. The evidence will show in this case that Michael Proctor is the very definition of the Commonwealth's case. And he's also their Achilles heel. He was the lead investigator on the case officer, the architect of the entire prosecution. You'll learn there's not a single part of this case, folks, not a single part that he didn't touch, that he didn't direct, that he didn't orchestrate personally. Every single bit of it has his fingerprints on it. You'll learn that Michael Proctor was a longtime family friend of the Alberts. And he's been disgraced
Me
by his
too.
own agency, not by us, by the Massachusetts State Police. Investigated, suspended, and fired. The evidence will show that Massachusetts State Police found Michael Proctor guilty of bringing dishonor to the department for his conduct, not in some other case, not in some tangential case, in this case. The investigation of Karen Reed. Conduct that included bias in favor of his friends, the all-powerful Albert family, and bias against my client, Miss Reed, the outsider. Do you have any idea how hard it is for a state trooper to get fired? The evidence is going to show that Michael Proctor earned it. Every bit of it. You'll hear that within hours of a Boston police officer being found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, who'd investigated exactly nothing up to this point, right at the beginning, made an early pronouncement that Brian Albert himself was not going to, quote, catch any shit, end quote. And that was for one reason, and one reason only.
I have it too.
He's a Boston cop. The evidence will show that Michael Proctor made this statement in a text conversation with his high school buddies. A text he never thought would see the light of day, certainly never thought we would get a hold of. And when he thought no one was looking, he actually said the quiet part out loud. He's a cop too. We'll give him a pass.
That's a big accusation.
You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, rank has its privileges. The evidence will show that's privileges that you don't get and I don't get. But apparently a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, and his friends, they do get. You'll learn that in Michael Proctor's world, he didn't care about finding the truth. In his world, his priority was to protect the Brotherhood, to protect that blue wall, to protect his friends who were at the Albert's house that night.
No. The opening statements.
I want to take a step back, if I could, and spend the next few minutes talking a little bit more detail about what the actual facts in this case will show, not based on speculation, not based on surmise, not based on guesswork or conjecture, but the actual true facts that you will learn through the course of this trial.
How are you?
On January 28th, 2022, it was a Friday night. John and Karen had made plans to meet up with friends for drinks. It was a happy and normal night for them. They were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits, nothing out of the ordinary. They started at a local watering hole called C.F. McCarthy's. You've heard that name before and you'll hear it again. And eventually they made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, another bar where they ended up.
I agree.
When they got to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, the Albert family was already there, already heavily drinking. You'll learn that this was no ordinary family, the Alberts. The Albert family was a well-known Canton family. Some might even describe them as a very powerful Canton family. Brian Albert was there at the Waterfall. You'll hear that he's a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there with him. His brother, Chris Albert, a powerful Canton politician. He sits on the select board. The select board actually governs the police department, the Canton PD. He was there. His wife, Julie Albert, was there. Their daughter, Caitlin Albert, was there. His sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matt McCabe, was also there. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. You'll learn that a man by the name of Brian Higgins, also a law enforcement officer, and longtime friend, longtime pal of Brian Albert, he was also there. And the two of them, the two Bryans, had been drinking most of the night together. You'll see video footage from the waterfall, which will show you that Karen and John were happy. They were affectionate. They were caring. They were loving. Just business as usual, out on a date on a Friday night. But that exact same video footage which lead investigator Michael Proctor plainly chose to ignore that video footage. It paints a very different picture of Brian Higgins. You'll learn that Higgins had romantic designs for Karen. That becomes important.
That's what
Brian Higgins had engaged Karen in flirtatious texts, but days earlier she had put a stop to it. She had ghosted him, in common parlance. In other words, just ignored him. The evidence will show that the first time he saw her and was in her presence after being rejected by her was when she walked into the Waterfall Bar and Grill along with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. At 11:58 p.m., just minutes before John ultimately arrived at the Albert residence, you'll see a video at the waterfall of an unsettling interaction, troubling interaction between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. And unlike the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, in this case, you won't ignore that evidence. As the bar was closing around 12 midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house for a get-together to just keep the night going. And you'll learn that Karen and John ultimately pulled up to the house. They got out of the SUV to make sure they had the right address. You see, neither John nor Karen had ever been to 34 Fairview. They weren't even sure they were the right address. And the evidence will establish that John got out of the SUV and went into the house. Let me say that again. The facts unequivocally, the data, the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish that John O'Keefe went into the Albert home that night.
Thank you, that was cute.
Eyewitnesses and forensic data will establish that fact. When he didn't come back out, you'll learn that Karen grew increasingly frustrated. She got upset. She was left alone in a car, in the cold, in the middle of the night, with the car idling. John had gone into the house. She expected him to come right back out. And when he didn't, seconds turned into minutes, and minutes started to clock away. She left John a voicemail, then another voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, text messages. But he was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. The Commonwealth will intimate, as they already have in their opening statement, that these voicemails are evidence that the two were fighting. The actual evidence in this case, however, will show the exact opposite. You'll hear that Karen was very agitated. You'll hear some voicemails where she's swearing. You'll hear voicemails where she calls him names. There's name calling. But you'll also hear the context of those voicemails.
Okay.
And every single one of those voicemails was left for John after he failed to come back out of the house, after he failed to respond to her voicemails and to her texts. Karen believed John had just left her sitting there, grabbed a beer, was partying with his friends. The evidence will actually show that John and Karen never had a crossword, not a single crossword that entire evening before he left that SUV and went inside the house. And you will learn what Karen had absolutely no way of knowing at the time. It wasn't that he wouldn't respond to her. It's that he couldn't respond to her. And the evidence will show you why. Let's talk about that. We'll introduce you to a doctor named Elizabeth Lopasada.
Thank you.
A renowned forensic pathologist, a medical examiner, and a professor at Brown University. She will tell you that the injury to the back of John's head, first of all, was immediately incapacitating. And that has meaning. At the moment he suffered that fatal head injury, he couldn't walk, talk, grab his phone, cry for help, nothing. He was completely incapacitated, completely unconscious from the moment he suffered that injury. He was completely still and incapable of interacting with anyone or anything. But the doctor will tell you something more, and just as important. She'll tell you that John O'Keefe did not suffer from hypothermia, as the Commonwealth will undoubtedly allege.
Really?
His body showed no signs of it. No frostbite,
Thank you, guys.
no cold-induced injuries to his organs, no damage based on cold or frost. Ladies and gentlemen, the scientific evidence and the medical evidence will establish that John O'Keefe had to be injured somewhere else, somewhere warmer, and his body had to have been moved out into the cold. And that's where, ultimately at 6 a.m., Karen found him the next morning. You will learn that John did not have a single injury consistent with being hit by a car. Let me say that again. The evidence will establish that John did not suffer a single injury on his body consistent with having been hit by a car. Not one. You'll learn that John's torso, his ribs, his chest, his arms, his hips, his legs, his knees, his ankles, his feet, all of them. No broken bones, no fractures, no contusions, no torn ligaments, no internal injuries,
I love that.
not even a bruise. Nothing consistent with a car accident, despite the Commonwealth's contention that he was slammed into by a 6,000-pound SUV. Not a bruise. Dr. Lapasada will tell you with medical certainty that, in fact, John was not struck by a vehicle. Medically and scientifically, he could not have been struck by a vehicle. Therefore, as I said, there was no collision. She will tell you that the patterned abrasions on John's right arm, the patterned abrasions you see over my left shoulder, they're not the result of being struck by a car or a taillight. You'll take one look at these injuries and you'll agree with Dr. Lapasada. The evidence will show that these injuries are from an animal, like a large dog, like the large dog that was inside the Albert house that night. You'll learn that Brian Albert has actually admitted that his large dog, the family dog, is, quote, not good with strangers. And of course, John, never having been to the house before, was a stranger that night. You'll also learn that oddly, very oddly, after having their family pet for 7 years, a short time after this incident, the Alberts got rid of that dog. They called it rehoming her. But she was gone. Dr. Lapasada will also tell you that the injury to John's head was not the result of falling backward onto a flat lawn, cold or otherwise. Rather, Dr. Lapasada will tell you with medical certainty that the injury pattern to his scalp was produced by an impact from a raised or ledged surface, a surface that does not exist on Brian Albert's front lawn where John was found. The medical evidence will establish no hypothermia, no injuries from a car strike, no collision with a motor vehicle. And forensic analysis of John's cell phone, Mr. Brennan mentioned that in his opening statement. The Commonwealth's own expert will ultimately support the exact facts that I just told you, including the temperature data. John O'Keefe was injured someplace warmer, and he was moved. That alone is reasonable doubt.
Yeah,
But there's much more. You'll also learn that there were many people at that after-hours gathering at Brian Albert's house who would have left by the front door just feet from where John O'Keefe's body would have ultimately been had he actually been there, right after 12:30 a.m., which is what the Commonwealth's claim is. There were nearly a dozen people who walked out that front door directly adjacent to the precise spot where John O'Keefe would have been lying. Not a single person, not one, not a single person saw a 6'2", 216-pound man laying sprawled on the front lawn in dark clothing on a light white dusting of snow. Not one. Then the evidence will also show that every one of those same people drove by that same spot, not walked by it, drove by it to leave the house, and still not one of them saw John laying in the yard when they left between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning. But you know who else you'll find never saw a body on that lawn? The snowplow driver. A completely independent witness charged with plowing the streets in Canton that night. You'll hear that Michael Proctor, oh, he's not done yet, Mr. Proctor. You'll hear that Michael Proctor wrote a report where he claimed that Fairview had not been plowed that night. You'll learn that that was completely false. That was a lie. Michael Proctor did not want any more witnesses. He didn't want the truth, and he falsely claimed that the road was never plowed. You'll learn that he wouldn't look for the plow driver, but we did, and we found, and we'll introduce you to, Brian Loughran. He plowed
He
Fairview
really
that
is.
night, and what he's going to tell you is that there was no body on that lawn at 2:30 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Laughlin passed by 34 Fairview traveling right next to Brian Albert's front yard, and at 2:30 a.m., John O'Keefe was not there. But you'll see that the plow driver also provides some other troubling information, troubling testimony for the Commonwealth. You'll learn that after making that pass at 2:30 a.m., he showed up with his plow an hour later. He stopped at the entrance of Fairview. He was looking up Fairview to decide whether or not to plow it, but he saw an obstruction. At 3:30 a.m., he looked down the street, and in the very spot precisely where Karen would later find John's body laying at 6 a.m., there was a car parked in front of it, a Ford Edge. You're going to ask yourself, who's moving a car at 3:30 in the morning into a blizzard on the side of the road? You'll learn that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, intentionally ignored this fact as well. He did no investigation to find out who owned a Ford Edge, but again, we did. And the evidence will establish that the Ford Edge happens to be a favorite model of the Albert family. More than one Albert owned a Ford Edge at the time. You'll learn that those facts will add to the mounting and the overwhelming evidence that there was no collision and John O'Keefe's body was moved onto that lawn. You'll find that this is yet additional reasonable doubt in the case. You'll be introduced to science and physics, even from the Commonwealth's own experts. That science will establish that Karen Reed's SUV was not damaged by hitting a pedestrian, and conversely, John O'Keefe's injuries did not come from being struck by a vehicle. The Commonwealth mentioned triggering events, but what you'll actually learn from the experts, some of them the Commonwealth's own experts, is that a triggering event is not evidence of an accident. It does not evidence a collision.
Me too.
That's why we're here. A collision. And there's no evidence of one. Zero. You'll also find that those exact sort of triggering events that the Commonwealth will rely on are relatively commonplace on Karen's SUV, and none of them are associated with a claim of a collision. Folks, the science will not lie, and the physics cannot lie. And that science will tell you with certainty there was no collision with John O'Keefe. You'll add that to that rising mountain of reasonable doubt. I want to take you back to the night in question, January 29th, for just a few minutes. Remember, Karen had gone home after dropping off John and John walking to the house. While Karen was asleep at home with John's 13-year-old niece, what were the people who had been at Brian Albert's house that night? What were they doing? While she slept, what you'll find and what the evidence will show is that they were extremely busy. You'll learn that after a long night of heavy drinking, Brian Higgins left the Albert residence, but he didn't drive home. Rather, he drove over to the Canton Police Department, where he kept an office at about 1:25 a.m. Not a Canton police officer, but he kept an office there. Why go back to his office at 1:25 a.m.? Why go back to the Canton Police Department at 1:25 in the morning on the night of a blizzard? You'll learn that while there, Higgins made a call at 1:30 a.m. Higgins will later deny that he made that call. You'll find that curious. And his explanation for that late night visit to Canton PD, you'll find that it changes nearly every time he's asked about it. You'll learn that after everyone left Brian Albert's house, Brian Albert actually claimed he had no contact with anybody else except his wife. No contact. Until he woke up the next morning. So he says. Then you'll learn that that too is a complete lie. His phone records established that he placed a call to none other than Brian Higgins at 2:22 a.m. Shortly after Higgins completed that late night visit over to Canton PD. You'll wonder, what did they possibly need to talk about at 2:22 a.m. that night? The evidence will establish that Brian Albert called Brian Higgins first. Brian Albert then disconnected that call when Higgins didn't answer it. Seconds later, Brian Higgins returned the call. Brian Albert then did answer that call. They spoke for 22 full seconds, had a conversation, then they both hung up their respective phones. You'll learn that when they were asked about these calls and conversations, both Brian Albert and Brian Higgins lied about it. Both of them. They said they never had a call with each other. But then ultimately, when they were confronted with their own cell phone records and they could no longer deny the calls, they were asked independently, explain yourself. And they both came up with the exact same explanation. A butt dial. The evidence will make you question.
Okay, hold on. A butt dial? I know we're the jury and we're not supposed to talk about this. Are you taking as many notes as I am?
Why did Albert and Higgins speak at 2:22 a.m.? And why did they both try to cover up that phone call? You'll also learn after this incident, and within days of one another, both Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, both police officers, both trained investigators, got rid of their phones. Both of them. And what else you'll learn, Brian Albert got rid of? Shortly after this incident, Brian Albert got rid of his house, the whole thing. Just sold it. His childhood home, a home that had been in the Albert family for generations, he literally sold it mere months after this incident. Dog rehomed, phones destroyed, house sold. You'll learn that all these things happened shortly after the incident where John O'Keefe was found unresponsive and dying in Brian Albert's front lawn. And you'll also learn that Michael Proctor looked the other way. He did not investigate any of what I'm telling you. He pre-selected Karen Reed from the start. And he ignored everything and everyone else. Let's get back to what was happening with the others while Karen slept. What you'll learn during this trial is that Brian Albert's sister-in-law, you've heard her name before, Jennifer McCabe, she was at the waterfall that night and she was over at the Alberts' house that evening as well. She left the after-hours gathering about 2 a.m., a little before 2 a.m., got home around 2 a.m. And you'll learn that according to the Commonwealth's own evidence, from a forensic software program called Physical Analyzer made by Cellebrite, it's considered the gold standard for forensic tools. You'll learn that a Google search was discovered on Jennifer McCabe's phone. A Google search that Michael Proctor and his investigators never revealed to us, but we found anyway. A Google search that was time-stamped, according to their own data, at 2:27 a.m. 5 minutes after that 2:22 a.m. call that Higgins and Albert denied having. And that Google search on Jennifer McCabe's phone read, "Hoslong to die in cold."
What?
Hoslong to die in cold.
She
Now,
meant
misspelled
how
the first
long?
word.
She meant
Hos
how
supposed to be
long?
How, but the meaning's the same. How long does it take to die in the cold? Timestamp 2:27. And then that search was also noted by the same Cellebrite program as having been deleted. The evidence will force you to ask, why is there a search on her phone? Why is it logged at 2:27 a.m.? When the Commonwealth claims that she first learned of John's death and where his body was hours later at 6 a.m. So what you'll learn is that while Karen slept, here's what was actually happening by some other very busy bees.
There's more?
1:25 a.m., Brian Higgins makes an unexpected visit to Canton PD. 1:30 a.m., he makes a phone call that he later denies ever making. At 2:22 a.m., Brian Higgins and Brian Albert talk. They both deny and lie about having made that phone call. 2:27 a.m., 5 minutes later, a Google search appears on Jennifer McCabe's phone, "Hoslong to die in cold," hours before John's body was ever discovered. A Google search she denies making, and that she later, or at least it was later logged as deleted. Meanwhile, at 2:30 a.m., the plow driver confirms that O'Keefe's body was not on the lawn of Brian Albert's house, not at 2:30 in the morning. And at 3:30 in the morning, that area was obstructed by a Ford Edge. A Ford Edge like the one the Albert family like to own. The evidence will show in the meantime,
Shit.
Karen dozed in and out of a fitful sleep for the rest of the night, only to awaken just before 5 a.m. And that's when she realized, in a panic, John had never come home. And you'll see, it wasn't like John to not come home. That morning, you'll see and hear evidence that Karen's emotions had morphed. It had gone from frustration and anger, which you'll hear in the voicemails, to abject fear. Fear that something bad had happened. The evidence will establish by this time Karen was panic-stricken. She had a feeling something was very, very wrong. She was unable to get a hold of John. Karen went to go look for him. She got in her Lexus and she backed up to leave her garage at One Meadows. You'll hear a lot about that address, One Meadows. That was John's house where Karen was staying. She backed out of the garage, and during the course of the trial, you'll hear that she actually struck another car with that right rear taillight. During the course of this trial, the Commonwealth is going to desperately claim that Karen Reed's taillight was actually damaged by hitting John O'Keefe. They'll have no evidence of it, mind you, none, but they'll make the claim. We'll show you a video
Okay.
of exactly how that taillight was originally damaged, or exactly what happened at 5:07 in the morning. The facts will show that it was damaged in John's own driveway at 5:07 when Karen backed up and made contact with another car in the driveway. This is 5 hours after she dropped John off and he went into the Albert residence. As a result, the taillight was minimally cracked, but it wasn't completely shattered or damaged or broken. And that's the condition of the SUV when Michael Proctor got a hold of it. That becomes important. You'll hear from an independent police officer, an eyewitness to the damage on that SUV, someone not connected to Michael Proctor or under his control. And he'll tell you that he saw the taillight damaged before it was in Michael Proctor's possession, but it was not completely shattered. And you won't have to speculate how that taillight got cracked originally. You'll see it for yourself. It's on video. You'll learn that part of the reason that Karen's Lexus hit that car at One Meadows is because she backed out looking for him at a time when she was absolutely panic-stricken and grief-stricken. Where was John? Why hadn't he come home? What had happened to him? Is he hurt? Is he passed out somewhere? Her mind was reeling. The evidence will establish she wasn't giving anything away. Everything was on the table. What could have happened to John? You'll learn that when she woke up and he still wasn't home, she was just racking her brain for what could have happened to him, and she was worried about possibly the worst. He'd gotten out of the car, he'd walked to the house, she was confused, and later, when she found him at 6 a.m. on the lawn, when she last saw him going toward the house, her mind started reeling, oh my God, did a plow hit him? Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? What could have happened to him? And that video clip that you saw, out of context, when she said the words, he did not look like he was mortally wounded, she's not talking about at midnight. She's talking about at 6 a.m. when she found him. That's what she was talking about. Your job will be to make sure that the evidence isn't presented to you too cute by half. She was saying all those things. Did a plow hit him? Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? She was saying that to herself and to other people. And the Commonwealth, very obviously, will try to seize on that panic and twist this into some admission. But here's the actual truth. That's not a confession. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Could a plow have hit him? That's a person trying to make sense of an unexplainable circumstance, a natural concern of a bereaved significant other. A woman desperately trying to piece together what could have happened on this tragic night. John didn't come home. And the evidence will show that Karen Reed never said, I hit him. Never. Not in the background of the 911 recording, not on any dash cam video, not on any audio, not on any police body cam, not to a first responder. It's never mentioned in a single report. It's never reported in a single report from January 29th, not by one person, because it never happened. The evidence will show that there were at least 13 members of law enforcement or first responders and 2 civilian witnesses that were intently focused on what was happening at that scene. There were all over the lawn. They were all over Karen. Officer Sarath, Mullaney, Good, Lank, EMT Nuttall, Flamati, Kelly, Walsh, Woodbury, Whitley, Becker, Rowbury, McLaughlin, Carrie Roberts, Jennifer McCabe. They were all there, watching and listening. On January 29th, when John O'Keefe was found, not one first responder reported having heard Karen Reed say the words, "I hit him." Not one. Not one civilian reported having heard Karen Reed say, "I hit him." The facts will show that the first time this improved statement was ever claimed to have been made was some 24 hours later by a single EMT in an interview. Now listen to this. In an interview coordinated by a Canton police detective named Kevin Albert. Brian Albert's brother. And remember, Chris Albert, the other brother, is a board selectman to whom the Canton Police Department reports. And what's more, you'll learn that Katie McLaughlin, that's the EMT, that's the single EMT, the first person to have claimed to have heard this unrecorded and unreported statement, is years long close personal friends with a young woman named Caitlin Albert. You heard that right. It's Brian Albert's daughter. During the course of this trial, you'll become familiar with and you'll realize that the Alberts are indeed a powerful and indeed an influential family. And that will mean something. You'll learn that there are other major problems with the prosecution's case. The evidence will establish that Michael Proctor himself, the lead investigator and architect of this entire case, has a long-standing and personal relationship with the Albert family. Yes, that same Albert family. His sister was close friends with Julie Albert. He personally sat at head tables at weddings, or at a head table at weddings with the Albert family. He entrusted the Alberts with babysitting his own children. You heard that correctly. And yet he was the lead detective assigned to investigate the circumstances of a Boston police officer laying dead on the Alberts' front lawn. That's not just bias, you'll learn. That's not just coincidence. That, folks, is corruption. And you'll see how far it went. Michael Proctor was alone with all the critical evidence in this case, alone with Karen Reed's phone, alone with John's phone, alone with video footage, alone with the taillight material, alone when he claimed to recover evidence from 34 Fairview. He wrote the search warrants, he transported the evidence, he secured it, he submitted it, he did it all. That's Michael Proctor. And he did it without any reasonable oversight. You'll see during the trial that he intentionally lied and fabricated evidence during the course of this investigation. He lied in reports, warrants, he lied under oath. He lied about the time that he actually secured Karen Reed's vehicle. Why? Why would he lie about that? The evidence will give you the answer. He lied because he did not want it revealed that he had access to that vehicle and he had access to that taillight before any taillight fragments were found at 34 Fairview. Appreciate that. He had access to the vehicle before a single piece of taillight material was ever found at the scene. You'll find that there were two searches. The first and second search found zero. Nothing. Nothing around John's body. Nothing in the street. Not one piece of taillight fragment. But once Michael Proctor had that SUV and had the taillight in his custody and control, suddenly items started magically showing up. And not just a few items. 46 pieces of bright red taillight laying in the snow. Supposedly found in the exact same spot that was searched not once, but twice by independent officers who came up with zero. To be clear, you'll learn that before Michael Proctor had access to that taillight, not a single piece was ever recovered at 34 Fairview. That will become vitally, vitally important. And what about those shards of plastic, by the way? What about this DNA that the Commonwealth mentioned? They're going to try to dazzle you with talk of DNA because it sounds so scientific. DNA was on the taillight, but you'll learn that there was no DNA
Me too.
on the actual shards that they claim came in contact with John's arm. None. There was no blood, no tissue, no skin, no DNA on a single shard of plastic that they claim cut deep abrasions into John's arm, the arm that you saw overhead. The DNA that was actually found, the actual science will show, was found outside of the taillight housing where anyone with access to that vehicle would have touched. And it wasn't just one male's DNA. In that exact same sample, there were 3 men found. John and 2 unidentified males. So unless the Commonwealth is going to shift their theory that that SUV hit 3 men that night, their entire theory falls apart. And speaking of DNA, the evidence will further establish that John O'Keefe's shoe, the one that he was wearing when he was found, was sampled. And that DNA revealed 5, count them, 5 unidentified males. Recall that the evidence will establish independently that John was injured someplace warmer and had to be moved onto that lawn. 5 unidentified males touching that shoe. You'll also learn that you are not the first person, not the first to hear about the Commonwealth's theory of this case, that John was hit by an SUV. That's their theory. The Commonwealth presented this exact same claim to their own medical examiner, a woman by the name of Dr. Irini Scorti-Bello. And you'll learn that after reviewing what's called a law enforcement accident notifier, with law enforcement's theory of the collision written in it, defined in it, after conducting the autopsy herself, after examining John's injuries in detail, she refused to conclude that John's death was a homicide based on the Commonwealth's presentation and their theory. That's right. The Commonwealth's own medical examiner will not deem the manner of death in this case, a homicide. She won't do it. But they're nonetheless back again trying to present the exact same theory to you in this trial. Again, the evidence will show that that is reasonable doubt. Throughout this trial, the Commonwealth will try to convince you of paranormal events, phones calling themselves, messages deleting themselves, Google searches made and then unmade, evidence magically appearing and evidence magically disappearing. But all that smoke and all those mirrors will not ever reach their burden. Because that's what this case is ultimately about. It's about the Commonwealth's burden proof. You'll learn that during the trial, the Commonwealth bears the highest burden known to our justice system. They must prove every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And you'll learn that moral certainty means the highest level of certainty known in human affairs. It's not a small thing. They're not going to be able to do that. Not when every piece of this case was handled by a disgraced investigator with a motive to protect his friends, not when the physical evidence contradicts their very theory, not when their own medical examiner won't call this case a homicide based on the exact theory that they're presenting to you, not when the conduct of those in the house and the utter lack of investigation speaks volumes about those who actually have something to hide. By the end of this trial, you'll conclude that Karen Reed is not guilty of hitting John O'Keefe with her SUV. There was no collision. She's the victim of a botched and biased and corrupted investigation that was never about the truth, folks. It was about preserving loyalty. You'll find that this case is the very definition of reasonable doubt. And at the end of this trial, we'll ask you to return the only verdicts, all 3 of them, that are consistent with the evidence, the science, the truth, and justice. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Holy shit. Who suggested this case again? Thank you. That was you can't handle the truth opening statement. No. We're doing this as if we've never seen or heard anything about this. I cannot believe, with that evidence, how they're putting this woman up for murder. Abby, what are you doing? Fluffers, come on out of there. I'm thinking the 5 men are his colleagues. All right. We're not supposed to do this, but I will. Let me find the first page. Hold on. I think the biggest part for me was the fact that his home was sold right after this. But there's a lot of them. There's a lot of big pieces. So we start with he had no injuries of being left in the cold. He did not have any hypothermia, none of that. Then those marks on his arms appeared to be animal marks. Then what happens? They got rid of their dog. There's no injuries to the body suggesting a car had struck him. And they have that he died somewhere warm. The snowplow driver that went by at 2:30 in the morning did not see him in the driveway. Then after that, a Ford Edge car was moved to where they were going to put the body. The Albert family owns a lot of Ford Edges. And then Higgins went to the police station at 2 a.m. during a blizzard to talk to Albert on the phone. And then they both got rid of their phones. Kate McLaughlin is close friends with Caitlin Albert, Brian's daughter, and she's also the EMT. Now, who's Michael Proctor? Did anybody catch that? I missed that. I have down prosecutor close to Albert's ? Michael Proctor. Right? They are. So the first time they did a search around his body, they didn't find anything in the snow. But when the guy that had Karen's Reed vehicle went and did a search around the body, suddenly there were taillights in the snow. State Trooper, thank you. And there were no DNA found on the taillight fragments. And if they're trying to say that that's why his arm was scratched up, which it looks like an animal, not that, why was there no DNA on those taillights? There we go to the home. The home was sold right after this. But there's more. There was a Google search at 2:27 a.m., 5 minutes after Albert and Higgins had hung up at that phone call at the police station that he drove to in the blizzard. How long to die in the cold? And then they went back and deleted that search. At 5 a.m., Karen realized John didn't come home. She starts freaking out. I would be leaving him messages cussing too. I just would. I understand that. On her way out, she hit a car. That was the only thing that happened. And it did some kind of damage to the taillight. But then she went to go find John, and she found John at 6 a.m. He takes the car, and then suddenly he has access to the I understand why this first one ended in a mistrial. Or a hung jury. I'm sorry. I don't have a last name written down. I was trying to write fast. What in the hell? How is this? The medical examiner won't even rule his death a homicide. How is she on trial for murder when the medical examiner will not rule it a murder? It gets better. Like, we're going to end up having palpitations here. Holy crap. I've never, ever covered a trial with this much evidence that they have to prove it was the opposite. They got rid of their phones. They got rid of their dog. They got rid of the house. Where's your sign? Because there's plenty of them. It does scream corruption to me too. So the state has a lot to disprove and to explain, if you ask me. Now keep in mind, I've not done any research on this case. Many of us in here have not. I didn't watch the first trial. All I know is that it was for her boyfriend. And then I found out today he was a cop. We're doing this as if we're the jury, so please don't give us any spoilers. She's accused of unaliving her boyfriend who's a police officer. That's why we're doing it this way, Marie, because we have so many trials that this one came up and I got a lot of requests to cover this one, so we decided to do it as if we're the virtual jury. That's a good question, Parker. I think she was heavily intoxicated, but I can't say for sure. Thank you for the follows, guys. I'm flabbergasted. We've done this, was it once or twice before? I'm not sure, it was once or twice before. And we really enjoyed it. We really enjoyed doing it this way. It gives a totally different insight. We're all on the same playing field as far as what we know and don't know. Thank you. If she does get convicted, they have to have something to rebuke everything that he just said. Thank you for the follow. I cannot believe that they have been after her all this time if everything he said is true. The level of corruption, planning, and everything that they did. Think of how many people would have to have their hand in the cookie jar for this. We're on day one. We're just doing the opening statements right now. Today, day one. Tomorrow will be day two. I just had to pause it after he was done because I had to get this out. I thought I was going to have palpitations and my head was going to blow off or something. I cannot believe what we just heard. And then his shoes. His shoes had the DNA of 5 men on it that they could not find in the system. Funny how that works, isn't it? Now, I want you guys to keep in mind, I'm aware that we'll get people that come in here that are all on the side of law enforcement. We'll get people that are not. I am normally on the side of law enforcement unless I am given a reason not to be. If he can prove all of this, that is exactly where I will be. They sure were. They sure were. Really? That's crazy. Well, it's okay. Well, we got our notes. My notebook broke, so I had to tear the pages off because it only holds half of the page. It just broke. But damn, I'm just going to say I have never seen a case presented like this with so much against the prosecution. That's crazy to me. That's absolutely crazy to me. I'd appeal it. All right, let's continue so he could tell us, or somebody could tell us something more, because side-eyeing them is not even close to, yeah, guys, if I ever get arrested, make sure he's my attorney, okay? Because we both know that if anyone ever looks at my phone, they're gonna think I'm a serial unaliver because of all the cases and stuff that I have in there. I have no plan to break the law, nor would I. But if in some reality I ever get arrested, please, someone, make sure this guy is hired for me. He is really good. And I don't usually like defense attorneys much. All right, let's hear what the state has to say.
Oops, why don't we take
Why couldn't Lori Daybell try to get him? Oh, wait, no, we don't want her to get him. Because if she got him, she might get off. Who knows? Right? Speed dial.
You are muted.
That's the thing we've been hearing the whole time is that damn fan. If they could prove this, a lot of cops need to lose their jobs and go to jail. We don't know, Pickle, because this is many of our first time seeing this, so I don't know who she had last time. We're doing this as if we're the virtual jury because we've gotten really busy with cases. We haven't had time to research it, so we're doing that. Have a good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming in. So they claim that she's a victim of a cover-up, and as everything stands right now, I am agreeing with that. Prove me wrong. Prove us all wrong.